Alrighty, let's see. There we go. Recording started. Morby, good morning. Well, great to meet you, and thanks for coming on and agreeing to be interviewed, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. For those folks who don't know you, Morby, would you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and what you're passionate about?
My name is Mordy Oberstein. I like long walks on the beach and cocktails in the evening.
Fantastic. Do that now, maybe.
But I'm currently the head of SEO branding over at Wix. I'm also a communications consultant for SEMrush. I've been in the SEO world for almost 10 years at this point, multiple roles. Usually on the product side, I've worked for multiple SEO product providers, doing their marketing and product development also at the same time, which has been a lot of fun. I'm a general all-around organic growth geek, particularly from the search side of things. And I'm looking forward to chatting about this.
Fantastic. Well, just jump in a little bit, because some people may have lived under a rock for the last 10, 15, 20 years, or they may be even new to the industry, or a mixture of both. What do you mean by growth expert? What do you mean by SEO? What is it that you're actually trying to achieve from a business perspective in your multiple roles, by the sound of things?
That's a very loaded question. And it depends on who you're speaking to, the answer you're going to get. Back in the day, I'll say that SEO was about manipulating search engines. For example, people realize, Google's novelty was that they won't look just at the keywords that you're using, as opposed to, let's say, Yahoo, what they were doing back then. Google will look at the links and say, hey, you know what? If a bunch of pages are linking to your page, that's sort of affirmation that your page is great. So what did SEOs do? Like, all right, let's just set up a bunch of websites and we'll link to the website, and then Google will see all the links and then say, wow, so many links, and rank us better. So SEO used to be about manipulating search engines. Fundamentally, though, what SEO really is about, I say it's a two-part process. It's multi-layered, and there's really different multiple ways you can look at SEO, and therefore different multiple places you could fit into the SEO world. But it's about ensuring that your website is healthy, so that Google can crawl it and index it and hopefully rank it. At the same time, it's also about understanding the ecosystem that is Google, to understand what Google's looking for, how they're looking for it, and then how you can capitalize on that opportunity so that you can grow your site organically.
Well, by the sounds of things, Google is the internet. Yes, because we have lost a bit of competition. I remember back in the day, AOL, Yahoo, and there used to be other others as well, so long ago. Now I think Google's not a company, it's a verb, never mind anything else. But where do you see the web going? Is it a Google web, or is it going to actually be slightly more evolved with more search engines that actually offer us some value, and therefore we should be looking at them like is it DuckGo or a couple of
DuckDuckGo? Yeah, there's
DuckDuckGone maybe.
In SEO, the typical answer is it depends. We always say it depends, and the answer is it depends. It depends on Google, in my personal opinion. I don't think any of the current competitors out there are going to offer Google stiff competition, whether it be Bing or DuckDuckGo. Brave has a search engine. There's an SEO tool called Ahrefs. They have a search engine called 𝘀𝗲𝗄. I don't think any of those are an issue for Google. I think on the e-commerce side, Amazon is a real issue for Google, and that's why you see Google trying to double down on what they're doing on the shopping experience on the results page. But what I think is going to happen with the web is, in general, I think the novelty of the web 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago was, wow, I can get all this information. That's not novel anymore. I think people don't realize that content, how we acquire it, how we consume it, what we expect out of it, is one of the most malleable, most volatile, most changing things on the planet. If you look back to my classic examples, when you look back to the 1960s or prior to the 1960s, presidential debates in the U.S. were all on the radio. 1960, 1961, I forget what it was. So JFK and Richard Nixon debated on TV for the first time. And if you listened on the radio, you thought Nixon won. If you watched it on TV, you thought Kennedy won, because Kennedy looked like Kennedy and Nixon looked like Nixon. But it changed the way we consume political content forever. And like those small things, the small ways that content changes and what we expect out of content has huge ramifications. And I think what we expect out of content now is very different than I would say even 2 or 3 years ago. And I think Google understands this, and it understands that people want more nuanced results, more accurate information that's more specific to what they're looking for. And they want a more layered experience. They want to be able to choose where they go with it. So show me all the different segues or all the different pathways to the various aspects of the information or the subtopics around what I'm looking for, and let me decide where I want to go and dive deeper into them. And I think Google has a technology that's going to allow you to do it. But I think the question for them is, will they abandon their current model for something different?
Well, see, that's something different. Like I remember years ago, I'm now making myself feel old by using the word back in the day again, but year 2000, the web came out, as you said, really interesting just to see stuff. And then you start to do more interactive, more, not quite immersive, because that's I'm going to come to in a moment, just stuff like Google Earth. And then the oddity is I could have traveled down the streets of Cairo, visited Rio de Janeiro. Instead, I didn't. I looked at my back garden, and that was me in my neighbor's back garden. I went, oh, look at that. But now we're actually seeing, just to lead into a point you mentioned a moment ago, we want the metaverse is coming up. We want more immersive experience. If I'm going to a baseball game, I want to go with my friends. I want to look around the place. I want to get player stats. I want to get history. I want so much more information, but I don't want to actually leave my house. So what are Google, let's just focus on Google for a moment, doing to change how the web actually works? And then from an SEO perspective, what should companies be doing? Because for Google to present more than two layers, in other words, text or a bit of video, now into immersive experiences, now into data experiences, and play that back, for me to have a personalized web experience, that feels like a big change to their current model. And if companies are trying to present on Google and actually get to be seen in amongst the morass of many others, then it sounds like they're going to have to take a different direction in terms of the volume and the types of content that they layer out there into the internet.
Yeah, and it's been like that slowly for a while. I don't think people have really caught on to it yet, but I think it's going to reach a tipping point where they're going to have to catch on to. And I think the baseball game is a great example. I'm a giant Yankees fan. So if I Google go to Yankees game, what you typically get now is very linear, where you get a bunch of websites where you can buy tickets to a baseball game. But there's, again, as you mentioned, there's so much more to that. There's such a layered set of information that you're really looking for in terms of, you think back to the pandemic, COVID restrictions, right? Or how do I get there? Is it safe? All these other ancillary holistic pieces of information that you need. And Google doesn't really give that to you, but you kind of do really want it. And I think what's going to happen is that Google's going to be able to, it has a technology, hasn't fully integrated it yet into the algorithm, to be able to parse out things like go to. And the Google's given examples of this. So they talk about preparing for a hike, and they talk about how their new technology is called MUM will be able to parse out what it means to prepare for a hike differently than they can now. Like, to prepare can mean many different things. It could mean, the equipment that you need. It could mean, training, and it could mean, tips, all these things about preparing for a hike. And Google's going to be able to parse that out, which is what you and I as a consumer of knowledge want. We want more specific information. Then I want to dive into that one. And I don't want to dive into that one. Like if I want to prepare for a hike, I don't want to dive in just to, the conditioning and the fitness part of it. I also want to dive into the equipment part of it. And what Google's going to be able to do is to parse all of it out. And then I think offer you segues into those different parsings. So you can explore each one in its own and then come back and then go into a different one, almost like a portal, so to speak.
And do you see, so Google is, just you mentioned a moment ago, facing Amazon and YouTube and all other, what I would describe as, they're meant to be shopping sites, but they're actually search engines in the main vein. The oddity is I'm not actually seeing them doing this same thing, this more immersive experience, this more, nuanced and layered web. So it's almost as if we as a set of viewers / consumers, or whatever we want to call ourselves, are expecting so much more today because we've been presented with that because of all the technologies we're actually seeing. Take Facebook, Meta, whatever we want to call, all these things are coming. That's inevitable. But I'm just not seeing search engines and web browsers or the purveyors or collectors and representers of the data and the information, the experience and the entertainment and the commerce and everything else that we actually want moving at a pace that maybe I expect. Is that due to technology challenges? Is that because they don't believe consumers are ready? Or is that because they've built such massive engines to actually transform those into modern digital malls that present a pile of information? They're just not there yet.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what's happened is that we've sort of woken up as a people, as internet people, to wanting more. And the search engines haven't caught up. Google in particular hasn't caught up. I think they've been at this for a long time. And I think that these things are very slow more. So if you look at YouTube, which is owned by Google, think back a year, 2 years ago, there was just videos. But now if you look at, there's all sorts of video types. There's shorts, there's long-form videos. But if you look, there's also things like Google will put in like images now, or they'll put in like questions like people also ask into the YouTube experience, trying to make it a little bit more immersive, a little more diversified in terms of the type of content that you're getting. Or if you look at, it just recently, Google has been testing this out in the US at least. If you Google like Oprah, so you used to get a whole bunch of information, but Google's reformatted that and they've made the information much more visible, much more almost like an app kind of experience. And they've made it so that it seems much more diversified and immersive in terms of the content that you're getting, much more accessible that way. So they're trying. I think it's a matter of the technology and being able to parse things out. That all of this depends on Google being able to parse that information. If they can't parse out, who is Oprah into all those different facets of Oprah, none of this works. You can't send somebody down a wormhole if you can't parse out the different wormholes. At the same time, I think, look, it's hard for a company like Google to say, what's worked for us these past 10, 15, 20 years, or they're 20 years old? This 10 blue links. Okay, now they have a whole bunch of SERP features and boxes and carousels and whatever it is. But fundamentally, it's been those organic links. To move away from that to a more immersive portal-like experience, I think that's hard for a company to do. And that's my question. Will they be able to do it, or will somebody else swoop in?
Yeah, because that is going to be the interesting bit, because now, like, I don't really want to type anymore, as lazy as that seems. I sort of want to talk. I want to go down video routes and everything else. But how does Google get adverts into video and everything else now? I have to be honest. My current
figure that out.
Yeah,
don't worry.
I think they will. My current YouTube experience, I think, am I watching videos in between ads, or am I actually going on to see ads?
It's a little much. It's a little much.
So what about SEO experts, and what about companies that you work for, like SEMrush and Wix, who are set up to allow people to actually, create all this content in what I would describe as a very low code manner? And by that, for those who aren't familiar, if I look back 20 years to develop a website, you did HTML, you might have done PHP, you might have done a whole load of stuff, and you needed to then configure servers. You needed to buy them. 6-8 weeks later, parts turned up, and then ultimately you hoped you could get online. Now, Wix, for example, is, I would call it, democratized the web, because you can build the most amazing websites using point, click, drag, and everything else. But where's Wix going? Where's SEMrush going? Where should we as web developers and as businesses be aiming to build our websites so that they get found and they're more immersive and they get audiences drawn toward them as well?
Yeah, and I think it's where Google's going. I've had conversations with Google about this also, behind the scenes, about democratizing the web. And you see that's where they're trying to go. And I think as Google, from a pure SEO point of view, as Google's better to understand content, which they are every single day. And if you look back at what they're able to do now versus what they were able to do back, years ago, that opens up the web, because they no longer have to rely on, oh, wow, this website has so many links, so I trust this website. It's Amazon. I know they're great. Or it's, WebMD.com. If they're more able to understand content, they'll say, well, WebMD, I know you're the super authority here, but this page is actually from this other niche website is actually way better than your page. So that opens up the web. Google understanding content democratizes the web, which is what Google wants and what Google needs in a lot of ways, because the content that's out there is pretty much crap. And if Google needs the experts to write the content, it typically is going to be a small business owner or an SME, whoever's running those businesses. They're the actual experts. That's some content marketing agency in the middle of Utah. I don't know why I picked Utah. Yeah, it sounds good.
You're very inclusive. I
try to hit all the states. I'm from New York, so I'm very much New York centric, but I try to hit all the states to, diversify a little bit there. Google needs those people to be able to be incentivized to write content. If they're not ranking for the good content that they're writing, I'm not going to continue to write it. So Google needs to be able to rank them, which means they need to be able to understand content better, which is where all these other technology companies like SEMrush, like Wix are going. SEMrush, for example, also, they've pivoted heavily towards SMBs. If you look at all of their marketing now, I'm not speaking as an official rep of SEMrush here, But if you just look at what they're doing, they're targeting SMBs. They realize that the web is being democratized. There's a whole untapped segment of people who SEO is applicable to, who can now do SEO because now they can rank websites because you have companies like Wix, which is why, by the way, SEMrush and Wix have a recent integration together. Separate point altogether, which is kind of what we do at Wix, at least on the SEO. I think as a whole, and particularly from the SEO point of view, which I can speak to directly because I work on that stuff. We realize, I think, that the web is moving to a place where it's far more accessible for people to be on it and to succeed with it without having that super duper hyper specific technological background, which I know that the people who do have that background don't want to hear me say this. It's kind of what you want. You want the web to be accessible. It's a good and healthy thing. Leave aside your personal interest for a second. I think we can all agree on that. And what we do, particularly on the SEO side, is I'll sort of compare it to exercising. You could be at a place where you want to run a marathon and you need a personal trainer to do that. So in the website speak, you need an SEO professional to come in and to understand the Google ecosystem and the technical side, all these different aspects of SEO, and to help you out. But if I just kind of want to get into shape, I don't really need to hire a personal trainer. I can exercise on my own. And what I think people don't realize is that you can exercise on your own. You can SEO on your own, to a large extent. Obviously, when it gets more complicated and more, this larger and more nuanced, you're going to need to bring somebody in to help you. But there's a lot of things that you can do on your own to succeed. And Google wants you to do those things. I think that's why Google has been very friendly towards Wix, as publicly speaking, in the last year, 2 years or so, because they realize this. So what we try to do with our SEO tools is, okay, if you're an SEO professional, you want to customize things, you want to do more advanced things, you want to blah, 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 you can do that. We've set that up for you. So let's take structured data markup code. You can customize your code. You can add all the code that you want. You can do it at scale, the folder level, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but if you're somebody who spins up an e-commerce website, and you want to have that code on the page, which is super important for appearing as a rich result on Google, but also now it automatically makes you eligible for Google's Merchant Center, meaning you are on, if you have product structured data, valid product data markup on your page, you can now be part of Google Shopping automatically. Super important. So Wix automatically creates that for you. You literally don't need to do anything. It's there for you automatically. You put up a product page, and we can do that because we understand it's not like WordPress. We don't know what you're doing on the page. We've structured the product pages. We know what your description is. We know what your title is. We know everything. So we can pull that information and then create the markup code for you automatically. You don't need to do anything. So that's the web, or the Google search has been completely democratized in this case. Now you don't need to know code in order to be eligible for those rich results on the Google search, and now to be part of Google Shopping. You simply put up the page, and you're eligible. If you want to mess around with that code, it's there. And what we do is we'll when you edit that code on the Wix side, if you add code that's not all there, if it's got errors in it, if it's not the proper code, you get a little warning, like not read, like not good. Try again.
I kind of love that. But
Yeah,
I kind of love that because I don't go out in my car in the morning and then get in and start building carburetors and start putting
do they
screws.
still use carburetors?
Yeah, probably do. I can't remember, but I haven't looked under the bonnet in about 20 years. But it's the same kind of thing. It's abstracting all of the complexity from me. I want to get in. I want to do something. I want that ready to go. I don't particularly care about anything else in the background. I might want to optimize my car, might want to tune it, whatever else. And that kind of sounds like what's happening here. But there's a lot of resistance to that at times, though, isn't there? Where people believe real experts go in and tune the server and do whatever else. But as a consumer, that's not what I want to touch.
I think there's a lot of rhetoric around this. And I think that, we sort of get into these camps, almost like politicized, like, in a weird way. Like, if you're not fully customizable to this extent, bad. Fire, bad. Water, good. It's like very simplistic, and you're looking at it in a very narrow, linear sort of way. For example, like most websites don't need a custom bespoke solution. They just don't. So why would you do that for them? It's just a waste of effort. It's a waste of energy. You could do the same thing for less money and with less headache. That's not it. So full on customization. I'm not saying you can't customize with Wix. I'm not even mentioning a point. I'm saying just full as an idea, full on customization doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it's inefficient. At the same time, there's sometimes needs for customization. And then the question is, what's the opportunity cost? By the way, I will just say with Wix, and I think this is where people, the lingering perception, the way we think about things is so boxed in. Did you know there's a full stack dev tool on Wix?
I did not.
Yeah, it's called 𝘀𝗲𝗏. You can like set up any JavaScript functionality you want, pull in APIs, create custom tools inside of Wix yourself.
Darn.
So I think people don't realize that sort of thing. But leaving that aside for a second, the question, like in SEO, I'll always get, but Mordy, you can't touch the server with Wix. And that's true. You can't touch a server with Wix.
But do you need to?
So I've had conversation with 𝘀𝗲𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃, who's Google search advocate on Twitter about this. Someone was complaining about Wix, and John piped in like, why do you want to touch your server? You're just going to lock yourself out.
Yeah, never let me near the keys of the kingdom, by the way.
Okay, leave that aside. Let's say you do. It's not, I don't think it's the right way to look at things like good or bad, WordPress or Wix or Shopify or Script. That's not the way to look at it. Look at like, what are your needs and what's the opportunity cost? So in this particular case, okay, great. You want to have access to your server. Totally legitimate point. But there's an opportunity cost here. What's the effort that you're going to put in, the value you're going to get out of that for this particular website? Because on the Wix side, let's say, for example, you have an economy of scale. We have an amazing team of developers. People who are on the Chrome advisory board work at Wix. They're doing it for you. It's an economy of scale, so you don't have to do it. So like maybe there's a trade-off there. I'll give you a great case of this. So you have access to your server. You're on WordPress, your server, you're on the Amazon server. And remember when Amazon servers went down and half the web went down with it? So great, you had access to your server. Congratulations. But you went down and that's it. You're stuck. Wix does use Amazon servers, but we automatically optimize the CDN. And once we saw, okay, that server went down, we automatically moved all the websites over to a different server. So while half the web was down, Wix sites were still up and running and selling stuff. Yeah, so which is better? And I'm not saying which is better in the sense of like choose what. What I'm saying is there's opportunity cost to each one. And it's not like this is better than that. This is different than that. And this is a different unique selling point and unique value than that. I think that's a more mature way to look at this whole conversation.
Well, let me ask you two questions. Jump to the right, and then we'll come back to SEO and websites. Someone like myself sets up a business. Now, I have my own website, which is fantastic, great. I'm now able to optimize it to my degree. I can go in and I get suggested, SEO terms, whatever else. But a hell of a lot of my business comes through LinkedIn. Where do you think the web is sort of shifting these days? Because at one stage, social media was not a thing. If folks realize that, they may be shocked. There's probably a collective gasp going off as people are listening in. It was always about website, get web presence. Now for a long time, it's been social presence, and a website's sort of been, yeah, it's a nice to have. And, you need it there to have social proof that you exist. But let me go back to your LinkedIn or your whatever, your Facebook site or other things do exist, I'm told, in the world. So where is Google and search engines and SEO and everything else trying to cope with this, where I don't have a website, I have a YouTube channel. I don't have a website, I have a LinkedIn social media profile. How is that whole thing coming together? And where should organizations or individuals who have businesses be investing their time to come up on top of all of the content on all of the web?
So I think it depends on your goals. Let's say, for example, you're a YouTuber or whatever it is. My kids love, I'm not a YouTuber kind of person. I don't watch YouTube. I watch YouTube content, but my kids will watch like YouTubers. Like, oh, this YouTuber is great. I never looked at YouTube that way, but God bless their souls. That person, like Mr. Beast, who my kids like, I don't even know what he does.
No, I know
he might not need a website. He may exist completely on YouTube, but I think like once you're looking to be a little bit more mature, and I don't even mean in terms of SEO and organic traffic and whatever it is, but in terms of personal branding, having that website offers the fact that you're a little bit more real, a little bit more mature, and a little bit more stable. Because social media, just from a pure brand point, which I love brand marketing, is why I do what I do. I do brand marketing and SEO at the same time, which is great. From a pure brand point of view, which I think brand marketing fundamentally is about latent signals, not the overt signals that you're selling, but that's a different conversation for a different time. What are the latent signals that it says to you that you don't have a website? Like if you're just on social, social is inherently very transient. What's there today is not there tomorrow, particularly on platforms like Twitter or now Mastodon or whatever it is, or LinkedIn, where the content, it's a timeline. It's gone. You mean you can find it, but it's not, for all intents and purposes, it's gone. What does it say that you, from just a latent signal point of view, you don't have a permanent place? What does that mean to people? It lacks a certain degree of permanence, and permanence equals security. And if you're trying to come off as being a secure brand that offers people something of secure value, I think having a website, from a pure brand point of view and all the latent messaging that it comes with it, having a website is an absolute must. You just have to have one. Otherwise, it's a very bad message, unconsciously at least.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well, and this is something I don't think people pay enough attention to, I have spent a large quantity of my time actually putting a ton of content on LinkedIn, and now a lot of videos, YouTube, whatever else. If they switched me off tomorrow, I have no rights to my own data, and I have lost a ton of value and a ton of followers and a ton of watchers and a ton of lurkers and everything else. So I'm very deliberate about moving my content into my own space under my own control, and then starting to let my audience see that there's actually more to me than the social profile, and then try and move them away so I'm less dependent on my LinkedIn overlords to basically say, yes, you can play today or not. Final question then, Mordy, if you don't mind. If you were advising people like myself, trying to set up businesses, trying to run websites, trying to get found in amongst the millions and soon to be billions of people on the internet, what would you be advising in terms of practical next steps? 5, 6 things that you would say, look, do these things, folks, over the next, 12, 18, 24 months. And then with all good intent, all fingers crossed, you will appear, you will be relevant, you will be moving where the web's going, and you will get found as well for people in your tribe.
Okay. One.
All in 2 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. All one foot. I got it. I can do it in one breath if you want.
No. I like my guest breathing. I don't see death on video. Not so cool these days, seemingly.
Obviously, you want to have that website, but what you want to offer on that website, I think when you look at the web content that's out there, I would not look at the web content that's out there and be like, okay, I'll just do that. I think that what's out there now, just trying to mimic and copy that, you're basically copying something that's behind the times, that hasn't caught up yet. You want to be a little more deliberate, a little more specific, and a little bit less top of the funnel with what you're putting on your website. And that could be anything from your homepage to your product pages to your about page. Often in your about page, you'll list like the history of our company. My great-great-grandpappy started a farm, and then my grandfather continued the farm, and blah, blah, blah. But you don't really actually talk about what the farm actually does and the fact that you've turned the farm into a drive-through movie theater now. Like, you don't talk about that at all. You just kind of talk about the history. So people are very indeliberate sometimes of what they do. The second thing is I would not put all my eggs in one basket. And especially when you're starting out, SEO, for example, is a 6-month minimum game. It's a long-term slow build. You're trying to get Google to understand who you are. It's like a courtship. Trust you, appreciate you, get you, marry you, rank you. That's not great if you're trying to start up a business. You need to be on different social channels. My sister has an e-commerce business. She gets most of her income and traffic from Instagram. She does not listen to any of my SEO advice, despite my best efforts.
That's worked.
Yeah, this is how it goes with family. Thanksgiving's always fun. But even if you are on the SEO side, I've seen many websites, they'll rank for 1 or 2 really great keywords that are bringing in a lot of traffic. But what happens when Google kills off those 2 or 3 keywords? So diversify, even on the SEO side, rank for a whole heap of keywords so that if you lose these ones, you're not just stuck. You have these ones that are also bringing traffic in. Be diversified, be specific. People are looking, when you look at what people are looking for or what they're complaining about this digital space, to me, it comes down to they just don't trust it anymore. And you need to do things that overcome that lack of trust. So because that's a whole separate conversation, but keep that in the back of your mind. And to me, that generally comes down to being a little bit more specific in what you're putting out. Because the more specific you are and the less salesy market or top funnel you are, the more trust you generally have with that. And
in terms of the content then we're putting out, just kind of last, I love picking your brain, hence why I'll ask you probably 1,000 questions, but at some stage we'll have to stop. What should I actually be putting out then? Is it long form blogging content? Is it video content? Is it micro content? What types of things should I be actually popping out there to build that trust, to gain that audience, to rank according to whatever it is I'm trying to get to rank toward?
All of it.
All of it. I like that.
But I will say, like, again, see what your audience needs are. For example, if your audience is looking for really, your audience are, professors at Harvard, you probably want to have much longer, deeper kind of content. If your users are, what do they call the people after? Not millennials. I guess I'm a millennial. I don't even know what I am.
Alpha, Gen Alpha. Gen Z,
yeah.
and then Gen
You
Alpha.
probably want to have like real quick pieces of content there broken up, or you can also, but again, you can repurpose that to create a much longer post. You're not really stuck. That sort of thing. I would repurpose a lot.
Fantastic. Mordy, thank you so much for what I would describe as about a multitude of knowledge bombs, all in 30 minutes or less, sir. I appreciate that a great deal.
I appreciate you giving me the platform.
Alrighty, sir. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Alrighty. I'll end recording so that the video edit is somewhat simpler.